Hello everyone, I am Dr. Sivadas Madhavan, Associate Professor of English, Ulaita University, Ethiopia. Today I am going to talk about the review of literature, that is the second chapter of the research. Last time I told you about the first chapter. The first chapter will be approximately 10% of the research. The second chapter is approximately 30% of the research paper. The third chapter, the research methodology, will be approximately 15% of the research paper. Then the next fourth chapter, that is the analysis of data or the discussion, will be approximately 40 or 45% of the research. And the last chapter, the conclusion, will be approximately 10% of the research. So this is the approximate size of each chapter of a research paper. But there is no hard and fast rule. This is the common practice. Or if you take a lot of research papers and check them, you will find out approximately of this size. So it is to have a general idea about the size of the research paper that I told you like this. And the second chapter, review of literature, is paraphrase, summary or quotation. That means you make an extensive reference to the sources by means of paraphrasing, summarizing and making quotations. But it is not mere compiling quotations. Collecting and collating quotations will not be research. Most of the time, especially these days, people easily cut and paste from different sources. That is not correct. And such students start with the quotation and end with the quotation, and in the middle also it will be quotation. So that is not right. The first sentence of a paragraph cannot be a quotation. And similarly, the last sentence of the paragraph is also not a quotation. You cannot make quotations in the first and the last sentences of the paragraph, because first sentence will be the topic sentence. Topic sentence will be your sentence, the researcher's sentence, and all the other sentences will be supporting sentences, and the supporting sentences can be quotations. Quotations can be in the supporting sentences, not in the conclusion, because conclusion is the conclusion of the idea of that paragraph that you have to make. The researcher has to make the conclusion about the paragraph in the concluding sentence. So it cannot be a quotation. And topic sentence cannot be a quotation because it is your topic sentence, you are the writer and your presence must be there. So first sentence and the last sentence of the paragraph cannot be quotations. That's very, very important. The students who do research must be very careful about that. And the sources the researchers depend on are the peer-reviewed, academic, expert, published documents. So it can be books, it can be journals, or it can be newspapers, or any material, but it must be relevant and up to the date. For example, peer-reviewed articles are preferable to the old textbooks. A researcher has to depend on the sources which are very recent. A source which is more than 10 years old is not that much valid. The unwritten rule about a research paper is that up to 60% of the sources must be within the last 10 years. If it is more than 10 years old, it is not that much valid because the research will not have the current status. So for the current status, you have to depend on the latest sources. That's why peer-reviewed articles are much better than the old textbooks. And when you do this, you have to be careful about two key elements. A researcher has to look into two key elements. One is descriptive narration. The other one is interpretive narration. That means descriptive means you are just presenting the state of affairs, just giving the state of affairs. But interpretive means you are interpreting the data. So whatever the scholars or the writers or authors or other researchers do, you can accept with your own critical view, with your own interpretation, and then there will be your voice, and your voice will be shown in the review of literature. That means your views must be there. It can be presented. For example, a very simple example, look into the sentence, the king died and the queen died. In this statement, just a statement of fact. The king died and the queen died. There is nothing more than that. But if you say the same sentence like this, the king died when the queen died, there is a story creeping into it. That is, the king died when the queen died. The queen died, and because of the love and affection towards the queen, the king didn't sleep, he didn't eat, he became sick, and he died. So a love story comes into it. So that's the way people narrate, people interpret it. So it is not mere description, it is interpreting. So when a person hears the story that the king died when the queen died, it becomes attractive. There is a story in it. There is a new idea. There is a new color to it. So that way, a researcher can modify the quotations or the paraphrases or summaries. So he can use his own view. A very good example, you can say, everybody knows Mark Antony's speech in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. Mark Antony came to speak in favor of Caesar, but the conspirators will not allow him to speak in favor of Caesar. But he was given the chance when he told them that he just wanted to speak, that's all, to participate in the burial. He came and started, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I came to bury Caesar, not to praise him. But he was trying to praise him. Every now and then he used the term, yet, the sentence, yet Brutus is an honorable man. That was to please Brutus and the conspirators. But at the same time, he was talking about the good qualities of Caesar when he was the ruler. And at last, the audience get the idea that Caesar was better than the conspirators, and they turned against the conspirators and started the fight. So that was because of Mark Antony's clever use of the words. So that way, a person can use his own way of interpreting ideas and change the views. For example, in a sentence like, in her analysis, Evans 2000 shows that the method of production was successful, and that was significant because it marked a change from the prior research. So this is the quotation, and in this quotation, the first part, in her analysis, Evans 2000, Evans is the name of the scholar, 2000 is the year of publication of her work, says the method of production was successful, and that was significant because of the remarkable change in the research. So there you are supporting, the researcher is supporting the idea of the writer. So this way, that using appropriate terms like conjunctions, introductory words, and discourse markers, you can change the idea, or you can give different color to the idea that you quote. So that's a very good example of using appropriate discourse markers. Like, for example, you can say on the contrary. When you say on the contrary, you are expecting an opposite idea. Or when you use however, then you expect an opposite idea. Like yet Brutus is an honorable man. Yet shows an opposite idea. So this type of discourse markers, moreover, in addition to, besides, therefore, etc. So these type of discourse markers will be used to turn the views left or right, or in favor or against. Or you can make the pros and cons using different techniques, like changing adjectives, changing introductory words, etc. And this is done in a three-term or three-layered approach. The three-layered approach is description, critique, and solution. Description means just presenting the matter of fact, just describing. And critique means evaluate the pros and cons of the idea. Or critique, C-R-I-T-I-Q-U-E. Critique is evaluate to see the positive and negative sides, or the neutral aspect. And the last one is solution. Solution is the suggestion, the suggested answer to the problem. But be careful, in the second chapter, you will never write the conclusion. You cannot put a solution as your conclusion. It is not your conclusion, because this is second chapter. Conclusion is in the last chapter. So here, whenever you say solution, the solution that a scholar or a researcher or another expert says, or his views, so that you can present, but that is not your conclusion. As your conclusion, if it comes there, it will go against the interest of the research. So your conclusion will come only after conducting the research. That is at the end. So after doing this, and to make sure that your review of literature is up to the mark, you can use a checklist. Some questions you can ask yourself, and if you get the positive answer, you can make sure that it is correct. For example, you can ask, have I read and evaluated the sources? Have I used the clear structure of the second chapter? Or have I reported and described the sources? Have I interpreted the information? Have I critiqued the information? Have I presented the solution? Have I used my own views, or have I gone away from the topic? Or have I written on the topic, etc. So these type of questions can be asked, and if the answers are positive, you can be sure that your review of literature is correct, or it is better. And at the end, you will present the conceptual framework. Conceptual framework is the flow chart a researcher uses to show the plan of action. The variables of the research will act and interact in the flow chart. So conceptual framework will be in the diagrammatic form, and it shows how the variables act and interact in the process of your research. So that will be presented at the end of the review of literature, and most probably it is like that. Sometimes some people will use conceptual framework in the beginning of the third chapter, or sometimes some people will put it in the first chapter itself. That's also possible. It depends on the researcher and the type of the topic he is working on. So there is no hard and fast rule. But most probably, or most commonly, people use the conceptual framework at the end of the second chapter. That is the most common practice that you can do. So that's all about the review of literature. And next time we will come up with the third chapter, that is the research methodology. Until then, goodbye.